Hi there, everyone, and welcome to the Athlete Cafe.
Hi guys, I'm Carly, former collegiate lacrosse player.
I'm Abby, former gymnast and collegiate dancer.
I'm Frances, former collegiate track athlete.
And I'm Emily, former collegiate volleyball player. Let's get into today's topics and see what's on the menu.
Large cappuccino. Orders up. Well, welcome back, everyone. We have a pretty special episode today. We have our first guest on the podcast. Welcome to Coach Tim Mack.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Great to be here. This is awesome.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, we're really excited. And today's episode, we're gonna kind of like do a little bit of an interview, kind of get to know Coach Tim, his background. He was a pole vaulter, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
kind of getting into his background, and now he coaches as well. So kind of having that good coach's feedback on mental performance. And so, let's get into it.
All right,
Thanks for
fine.
being here.
Well, so I'm from the area. I'm from Northeast Ohio. I grew up in Westlake, but I also went to Ignatius. Saint Ignatius.
really?
There you
Okay.
go. We have a lot of
So-
people that'll be excited to hear
Okay,
that
well,
one.
very good. So I vaulted in 8th grade. That's how it all kind of like started because
Okay.
we were running like 800. We were running for like 800 meters, and we would run mileage, and I like absolutely hated it.
You're like, not,
So
not
I would
for me.
like in 8th grade. I saw the kids like that were pole vaulting in the corner, and they were just kind of like having fun and jumping on this mat and like trying to pole vault on their own. And I was like, that looks like fun. Plus, they don't have to run. So I was like, can I try that? And the coach was like, sure, go over there. And so then I started, and then continued it in high school, and I really wanted to play like football and
Okay.
baseball, but then eventually like I got cut from the football team, which kind of sucked.
Oh,
But
no.
and then baseball, I rode the bench too much. I actually
Okay.
played baseball my sophomore year at Ignatius.
Okay.
Cool.
And so I didn't even pole vault. That shows you how much I thought like I was going to do it, for a long time. I
Right.
had no clue. But then I was like, well, I'm riding the bench in baseball. I got cut from football. I get my name in the paper for pole vaulting every once in a while, so I might as well do that. So,
Let's
Yeah.
switch it up and just,
stuck
do
with
something.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so stuck with it. And and so at Ignatius, I didn't even like after my 4 years, I actually never made it to the state meet.
Really?
I also didn't really have any scholarship offers.
Interesting.
And so
Wow.
there's like a lot of my path. I don't think I would wish upon many people, but I mean, I still wanted to do it though. So and I didn't even have the school record. So there you go.
There
Wow,
are so
that's-
many athletes that I hope are taking
That
note
are
of that
listening,
right now. I have a
yes.
couple in mind that, it doesn't have to be perfectly lined up for it to
Right.
still end up being so successful.
And even at that time, I had no idea. I mean, and that's what I tell kids too. And I'm like, look, I know you might not even know you want to do this for the next 4 years or whatever. And I'm like, that's totally fine. But if you like it and if you want to put your time and energy into something, then it's worth it. And I was like, because I'm a gold medalist and I'm teaching you, it's not like I expect you to do that. I was like,
Right.
if you want to do that, that's fantastic, and I will help you with that.
Right.
But in the meantime, if it's something you enjoy, just put your time and effort and energy into it. You never know where it's going to take you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I think that's so valuable that it doesn't have to be, you don't have to know in your freshman year of high school, yes, I want to go D1 or I want to go this elite track.
Right.
If you're having fun with it, that is so much more beneficial, and it's going to set you up to be able to, not hold the school record, not have all these D1 offers or scholarships or anything like that, and still want to put in the effort to go somewhere with it.
And I always share with a lot of the kids that I coach. It's like everybody eventually gets there, but nobody's going to take the same path.
Right.
I mean, and there's a lot of other things that I'm sure I'll point out throughout our talk here that helped me get to the point where I was at from high school to the point where I was like actually won Olympics.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So what was that transition like from high school getting into college for you?
Yeah, so high school to college, I was actually going to go to Toledo.
Okay.
Oh my gosh,
Okay.
I mean, because I was going to walk on, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I went there, and they're like, well, we'll give you like a little walk-on spot if you want to come here. And I was like, okay, cool. So I went there, and I actually had my schedule, I had my ID, I had everything. I was
So you were
going
pretty,
to
like,
Toledo.
committed to
I was
going
there.
to Toledo.
I went to orientation even.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
And but then over the summer, I was still pole vaulting, and I met a coach from Malone College over the summer at some summer meets. And they were like, you should come to Malone. And I was like, what's Malone? You know? 'Cause I've never heard of it. And it's like, it's not far away. It's only like an hour from Cleveland. And so,
Okay.
But there was a guy jumping 17 feet at the time that was going there. And the coach
Yeah.
who was there would be there for everything. He was retired and he was going to be there for every single workout. And so
Okay.
I kind of went on a quick, like, it wasn't really a visit because it was actually probably like July, you know?
Yeah.
But
Right.
I was like, yeah, might as well come here. And they somehow got me, academic scholarship.
Wow.
Another NAIA. This
Yeah.
is many years ago. So, I mean, I'm like, how did I do that?
Right.
I was like, because I was just scraping by. But
Yeah.
eventually got there, and it was probably the best decision I made because after 3 years, you know, it was a smaller school, and it allowed me to like have like a small core group of friends, and it wasn't like, you know, most colleges, like you go there and it's just like you get culture shock because there's so much going on and everybody's, you know, going to the big football games and there's parties all the time.
Yeah.
And so, but Malone was a lot more, it was a, you know, Quaker Christian school.
Okay.
And so I went there and we had our good, clean fun.
Yes.
It was good.
Yes.
And we had a good, fun group of athletes, but we also trained really hard
Yeah.
like, for vaulters. And that the coach that I worked with, Ralph Schreiber, he used a lot of the European methods of training and used a lot of those methods of periodization training.
Okay,
Which
okay.
I had no clue. You know, I was like, okay, I just wanted to do whatever. you
Yeah.
know?
Just do what is assigned.
And it was, you know, they had a good culture. There was like a good
really
culture of
important.
vaulters because Brian Kelly, who's actually I still talk to this day, he was like my training partner along
Okay.
with a few other athletes, and we continued. I mean, we vaulted, and I got better. I went from like 13.6 to like 17.5 in like 3 years.
Wow. Yeah.
But then here's the kicker, and this is one of the things I tell people that I was very lucky. I don't know if it was luck or maybe I just, you know, you have a vision and you just people gravitate towards you. But he was like, he's like, you know what? I think you need to go somewhere else now. I mean, come on, like I was his lead dog in NAIA, which is like between Division 2 and 3.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know, I was like winning meets all the time.
Right.
But after 3 years, I mean, for him to tell me, you got to go somewhere else. I mean, I would have stayed there. I mean, because I'm pretty
Right.
loyal to my
Yeah.
coaches and stuff. And he was like, yeah, you need to go. I think you need to go down south and you need to get in some better weather and better competition and jump because, you know, up here I was vaulting and,
tough, yeah.
you know, we were chipping the ice out of the pole vault box
Yep.
or I would jump 15 feet and then all of a sudden they'd be like, okay, the meet's
like,
over or something because
right.
it's snowing
Because
outside.
it's going. Yeah.
But he saw something in me. I definitely still did not have any Olympic aspirations. So I was like, okay. So we sent letters, like my mom and I, you know, that's how long ago it was. Not emails.
No emails.
No
Yeah.
emails.
Yeah.
No, we didn't get on social media.
Yeah.
It was just, we wrote all these letters to like some of the best pole vault schools. Because at that point I had 2 years of eligibility.
Okay.
Because I had redshirted a year.
Okay.
And I was jumping 17.4, which could like easily go in and score points.
Yeah.
You know? And so I wrote letters all over the place to schools in Florida and Texas and North Carolina and Tennessee. And then University of Tennessee actually got back to me first. And luckily they had 3 18-foot vaulters.
Nice.
And they had a 19-foot vaulter.
Wow.
Okay.
And I was like, I mean,
Wow.
come on. Like I went, again, it was really weird because I didn't go on like a visit.
Yeah.
Right.
You
It was
just,
like over the summer, and I was like the only one on campus. And the coach, like even today, like my coach Jim B. Miller, I just call him Coach. His name was just Coach B.
Yep.
He doesn't even really remember me coming there. or
That's so
what I
funny,
said, you know?
right?
Oh my gosh.
But they were like, okay, he's jumping 17 feet, and they gave me a little bit of a scholarship. It was like half a room and books or something.
Okay. Okay.
But I was like, hey, it's something,
something,
and I
yeah.
get to train with these guys. So I was like, it was a great opportunity. So I ended up going there.
That's
Was
awesome.
it kind of like daunting going to like a bigger school with like being on a team where you already have vaulters who are jumping like higher than you, and like what was that
Yeah,
like?
it was pretty interesting. I mean, you go to like Malone College, which was like 1,200 probably at the time, to Tennessee, which is like 30,000.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a
I was
little.
just
That's
like,
a difference.
what?
Yeah.
And it took me a long time, but at that point I was like just so focused on just like jumping, and everybody there was I mean, you go there and that's like big time. And so it was like we had a great group of vaulters, and we had a coach Jim B. Miller, who's also from Ohio.
Okay.
And so he was a vaulter, went to Miami of Ohio.
Yeah. There you go.
And so he was down there, and he would coach us. And he his coaching philosophy was a lot similar to like Coach Ralph's philosophy, which was like more of the European. His was more of the Polish version, and we can get into that too later. But it was still that, you know, you train the vaulters with the decathletes, and you just make them good athletes. So,
Okay, yeah.
you know, I had a lot of good basic fundamentals, but I needed to become a better athlete. So it was actually really good. And we all got together. A lot of the vaulters, we all had the same. We all loved to go play golf, so we would all just get a group. We go play golf, and, you know, and then we just go to the football game. So it was sort of like, you know, all I wanted to do. I mean, hey, I know people go to school and they want to study and do things, and I did too, because I knew like I could not study and I can't vault unless my grades are up there. So I knew that was part of
You
it.
had that responsibility.
And I knew
to keep
I had
those
that
up.
responsibility, but more so, I just wanted to get better at my craft.
Yeah.
Yep.
And school was offering me that ability. So
That's really awesome.
Yeah, I know that was kind of like a little bit of like my experience, like going into Penn State and like a big D1 school. It's like there's like a little piece to it of like, wow, like I'm going to be on a team with like these really, really good athletes, and it can be like a little scary, but like I always thought it was so exciting to be like surrounded by people who want to put so much effort into their craft.
yeah, and I mean, obviously, when I went there, everybody was bigger, faster, stronger than me, and vaulting higher. But I mean, it was just one of those things where I was like, maybe I just had the ability to just focus on trying to get better for myself. I mean, that's a skill I think, you know, people can learn too. And maybe I just had a little bit more of that skill, because it didn't bother me. It more or less motivated me to chase them in running workouts.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Although it was daunting. I mean, you know, because trust
Right.
me, I wanted to be as good as them. And it was,
Yeah.
and there were a lot of times where I was like, man, why can't I just be as strong as that person or
Right,
as fast as
right.
that person? But it wasn't, I was like, okay, if I think about that forever, it's not going to be
Right.
healthy. So
Yeah. And I think going from being you were the best, you were the guy that everybody wanted to be. Everybody was saying, I want to be as fast
Yeah,
as him.
yeah,
I want to
yeah.
jump as high as him. And then you could have very easily stayed in that comfort zone, but you wanted to look to the next step and said, I want to be the bottom of the barrel,
Yeah,
and
right,
have
right.
people that are setting the bar a little bit higher, figuratively and literally at that point, that I want to
Right.
achieve. I want to look up to them. I want to try to keep up with that level, which is just one of those things that sport teaches you so much about life, that you always want to be surrounding yourself with people that are encouraging you and pushing you to
Exactly.
be the best version of yourself.
Right.
yeah, and it was a great group, because it wasn't like, well, there are some things, because we trained with the decathletes, and decathletes
Right.
are another breed.
Yes.
You have to be at that
And
point.
these guys, luckily, I mean, you had to have thick skin to train with these guys.
Yeah.
I mean, but it was all in good fun. Like if you weren't keeping up, it would be a fun ridicule.
Yes.
Right. Right.
So you had to have thick skin, but they would be like, "Come on, you got to keep up. Let's go, let's go."
Yeah.
So it was always like you were motivated to stay in it, and it was almost like we just had a really strong group. And so, and I think over time, as much as I respected them, because I was just like, "Oh man, they're just super strong,
Yeah.
big, can throw stuff far, and can vault high,
Do
and
everything,
like,
yeah.
you know, I think they respected me in the fact that even though I wasn't the biggest or strongest, I was just like hanging on. and
Yeah,
just
you were always
keeping
there.
up. I was
You were
keeping
always in
up.
the
So it was-
conversation.
So we all had a mutual respect for each other, which was awesome.
That's huge.
So it was a very healthy situation.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
So from there, when did you decide you wanted to go the next step, or that could be in the cards to at least start training for that
For
next
like,
step?
for like Olympics.
Yeah.
For like a
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so 96, so I graduated around then. So basically I went to Olympic trials, but I was in over my head, really.
Okay.
I mean, I was on the runway and I was thinking like, don't miss, don't miss, don't miss, don't miss. I was just like
Yeah.
22 or whatever I was, and way over my head. But then it was something I was like, you know, I think I can still do this, you
Okay.
know. And luckily, again, like I had good people around me. Like I was talking to you about Coach Ralph and then Coach B.
Yeah.
But then there was also my advisor,
Okay.
of course, you know, so, who was at Tennessee, Buck Jones. So he was like, so what are you going to do now after I graduated? He's like, are you going to keep vaulting? And I was like, I kind of want to, you
Yeah.
know? Because at that point I was like, yeah, I want to see what I'm going to do. And so
Yeah.
he's like, how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for living expenses? And I was like, that's a good question.
have
He's
no
like-
idea.
He's like, well, tell you what. He's like, come back in a few more days, and I think I might have something for you. And I was like, okay.
Okay.
So I came back, and he's like, tell you what. I was like, so what's going on? He's like, I have an assistantship graduate assistantship for you.
Wow.
You're going to go to school. You're going to get your graduate degree in sport management.
Good.
And it's going to pay for your living expenses and
It's gonna
you
work.
know,
Wow.
the food and everything. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to keep training.
Yeah.
So kept training and got my graduate degree, which was another plus.
Yep.
Awesome.
I mean,
yeah.
I'm like training and I'm getting my master's. I was like pretty happy with that, and working with the track team still.
Okay, good.
And grinding it out a little bit for a couple years, and then after '98, I had to get like sort of like a quote unquote real job because I was getting better though. I jumped
Right.
18.4, at Tennessee,
Yeah.
so now I was up to about the 18.6 level.
Wow.
You have to be
Okay.
about 19 or higher to be like considered like Olympic caliber.
To be in that conversation.
Yeah, so I was working my way up, got some odd jobs. I was working as a fitness trainer, basically almost full time.
Wow.
And then I would go there and I would go work from like 7 in the morning till about 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And then I would tell people like just sort of like Superman, I would go to Tennessee and then I would like change in the bathroom.
Yep.
into my training. And then I would go and I would train at the track by myself or whatever. And then because luckily I could still use the facilities, because back
incredible.
then it was a lot more open. I could still use the
Right.
facilities. I could still, my coach was still working with me.
Wow.
I could use the training facilities, like if an injury popped up.
Okay.
And like today it's a little bit more, locked down.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But back when I was training, it was a little bit easier to be able to use the weight room at Tennessee and the
all the facilities.
all the facilities. So it was if that didn't happen, I mean, there's no way. So
Do you think a lot of their openness to you being there was because you had proven yourself as an athlete and just as a member of the community? You had that camaraderie.
Yeah.
You put in the work to kind of earn their respect
and I
for
think
that.
people see that. I mean, even though I would never like sheepishly go in and ask, can I use the weight room? They would just understand. I think they started seeing that I was putting in the time.
Yep.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
I was putting in the time. They're like, here's this guy. He's still training. He's still sticking around. He's going to school and he's,
Yeah.
proving himself. Anybody else might have quit at this point.
Yeah.
But,
Right. They
but
saw
yeah.
you were still willing to put in the work
Yeah.
and they wanted to do
Yeah.
their part
and
to
so,
help
like,
you
the
do
strength
it.
coaches would still help me a little bit.
Yeah.
And nobody would actually because when you're done with college, it's like in the track and field world, I mean, it's not like the NFL or it's not like the NBA where you get drafted.
a
Yeah.
team.
And then
Yeah.
you go there and the program's all set and all you have to do
Right.
is show up. I was like, in track and field, you have to want it. You're doing it because you love it. You create your own programs for the most part.
Right.
Like my coach, Coach B, he was an attorney in town
Wow.
and he had a family.
Okay.
So he was like not going to do everything for
Right.
me.
Yeah.
And that was understood. I didn't take it personal. I was like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
So then I would have other people help me. I had like quote unquote people in my support staff,
Yep.
that didn't know what my goals were starting to become, but would help me anyway.
Right.
So I would create my own programs, and then I would take it to the strength coaches at Tennessee. I mean, all they knew was like football, so
Right,
they would just
right.
like give me football workouts. But I would do them, and then we had great sprint coaches at Tennessee, so I
Awesome.
would come up with my own workouts. And then the sprint coach would tell me kind of like what he thought, what I
Okay.
should change and everything. So it's sort of like evolved. And I had a gymnastics coach because I had to get into gymnastics
Yep.
because I had to do
Yep.
that twice a week because, pole vaulting, you can't just pole vault all the time because it's really hard on your body. So you have to learn how to do gymnastic
Yep.
exercises. And so I went there, and Phil Savage owned he owned a gym in Tennessee, in
Yep.
Knoxville.
Yep.
I'm still friends with him to this day, but he would be there. He would let me come in there. Sometimes there wouldn't be anybody in there.
Just in a
Yeah.
full empty
how
gymnastics
dangerous is that?
facility. Yeah. Trust me, I've been in those
I-
situations a time or two.
I try to keep it kind of. I was very safe because I was like, I
Right.
don't like to do a lot of crazy stuff in there. I just did the basic stuff. I didn't want to get hurt.
Yeah.
I did my basic pole vault exercises. I mean, I would be like the only one in there. I can't believe. And then of course, I mean, he didn't charge me. Like,
Right.
Right.
None of the other coaches charged me. It's like, so it was a perfect opportunity. But, as I got into 90 and I got closer to 2000, I was like, in the year 2000, I was about 98, 99. I was starting to think like, hey, could be possible because I started jumping 18.8 and 18.10.
Okay.
Okay.
And then in 2000, I actually jumped 19 feet for the first time.
Wow.
For the trial. So I was like
Yeah.
probably 5 in the country. And I was like, okay, this is my shot. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Right.
But since I was pretty much in charge of all of my training, I sort of wanted to make it so bad that I was sort of overtraining myself. So I
Okay.
started like, I didn't have anybody there to be like, look at your training. You're doing too many sprint workouts in a week.
Yeah.
Because I was
Right.
doing probably 2 or 3 weeks worth of sprint workouts in like 1 week.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I could tell like when you sprint and when you're getting closer to a bigger competition in track and field, your run should start to lengthen a little bit because you have more power and you're covering more ground.
Yeah.
And that's very important for pole vaulting too, because when you do that, then you
got
get on poles
Yeah.
that are like stiffer and stiffer because all poles are different.
Right.
And so that's obviously a good sign. But in 2000, when the Olympics were coming up, my run was getting shorter, and I was like, "Uh-oh." Like, I knew,
Yeah,
like,
you could start to
something
tell
was up.
something was wrong.
And I was like, "Oh, all I have to do is like run more then." So then I just started like grinding it out even harder, and then the poles I was jumping on were like softer and softer. They weren't getting longer and like stiffer because that's what you want. So then you can jump higher.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So then I was like, "This is not good." I just knew like
you could tell
I could tell, but I was still
wasn't-
trying to be like positive, and then I ended up going there, and then of course failing again. But that I should. I mean, I'm not greedy. Don't get me wrong. But I should have made that team because I was like up there. And here's the thing: it's like I had to jump 19 feet that year, and it only took at that Olympic trials it took 18 feet 5 to make the Olympic team.
Interesting.
Really?
And
gosh.
I could only clear 18 feet like 2 or something.
Okay.
And I got like 6th or I
Yeah.
don't even remember. I put that out of my mind, but that was like ridiculous. That was like the very, very bottom of the barrel right
Okay.
there.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, just putting in like so much
Yeah,
years of work of
well, that's
like
what I think.
yeah,
Like-
of you like going to facilities, training by yourself, like doing all of that.
Well,
and
that's
then-
the thing. And then you sit there and I'm like, what else can I do? And
Yeah.
I'm like,
Right.
is there more I can do? I don't even know. And I would just sit there and I was just sitting there days watching everybody vault in the Sacramento heat. And I was just like, oh my God. And they're like clearing 18.5 and jumping around and all happy. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
I sat there, but I
Yep.
knew because I was just like, I'm going to sit here. I'm going to take this because at some point, I don't know when, but this is going to build me up.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because you have an option. Like after you're done competing, you know, you can leave
Yeah.
and get escorted out and just do whatever you want to do. Just get as far away as you want
Right.
to.
Right.
Or you can stay and you can watch. And I was like, I'm staying here. I'm going to watch and I'm just going to let it. I'm just going to take it.
Yeah.
Looking back, do you think that was like a critical moment? You had so many of hours of training to lead up
right.
to that, but you making the decision, I could walk away from this and nobody probably would even notice I'm gone.
Right. And nobody
But
would care.
Nobody would care. Nobody would blame you.
Right,
I would
nobody
I would
blame you.
want to
They'd be
get
like,
out of
"You know
there.
what?
We get it.
Totally
We've all
get
been
it.
there.
Let them leave
Right,
them
let
alone.
'em go.
Right.
But you decided, nope, I'm going to sit here and watch these other vaulters go.
Because that just, because I mean, it was like, I didn't know maybe till years later where I was like, that was like the turning point. Because I was like, this will never happen again.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like, I didn't know at that point where I'd never wanted it to happen again, but I was just like, I want to feel this pain right now because.
Choosing to sit in
Yeah.
that discomfort to say, you know what? I'm going to do something different about this.
Right.
I'm over it. I don't want this feeling again. I'm going to sit here and really almost intentionally feel
Yes.
these negative feelings, which we talk to the kids that we work with all the time. Sometimes it just has to suck for a little bit
Yeah.
and sit there and throw yourself a pity party,
Yeah.
watch those other vaulters and hate every second of it so you get it
So
out of
that-
your system and then can figure out what your
Yeah,
next
you
game
can-
plan
you can
is.
go up
Yeah,
from
and,
there.
and that's the thing, and like you hear it all the time. And I'm like really into motivational stuff too. But I'm like you always hear it like on Instagram and some of the things where it's like most everybody who's done something great, it's like everybody's fails like massively
Yeah.
at some point. And it's those massive failures that actually like push you to do
Exactly.
more and to keep
Yeah.
going.
Everyone is like always so afraid of failure and like afraid of like
Right.
sitting in it, but like those are the moments that like are the turning point to like really just push
Yeah,
you
yeah,
up.
yeah.
And you don't often know that that's the turning
Right,
point
yeah.
until years
You
later
don't know
looking
it.
back. Yeah.
And I mean, you know, and like a big failure will happen. And I mean, I know kids, you know, they hate it. And I mean, I'm coaching and I hate it for them
You're
too.
right.
Yeah,
It's
right.
the worst
And
feeling.
I want to be like, you know, I try to be positive and I'm kind of like, okay. Like, because I'm like,
Right.
they do not want to hear me talking right now. I get it. But, you know, I try to create some sort of positive environment. And then I try to tell them also, I'm like, I am like, you know what? You should probably sit here and watch a little bit. Because, you know, you support the other all the
Absolutely.
vaulters
Yes.
or jumpers, because I coach all the jumps now. But I'm like, because, you know what? I was like, sometimes that might, one of these days that might be you out there, and you're going to want some support from these athletes
Yeah.
too. So,
When I was a gymnast, my coaches, you know, that was the same thing. And it was one of those biggest life lessons of you could have just fallen 4 times on beam and your score is still sitting up there on that screen, and you want nothing more than the next routine to go up and they flash that score, so your 6, which is, you know, not what you want, gets off the screen, because otherwise you know that that's your name sitting there next to it. And so many kids would, you know, go to the bathroom and cry, or they're going to go talk to mom and dad in the stands. And my coach was like, nope, you are going to sit here. You can cry the whole time if you want, but you're going to sit here and you're going to clap and cheer for your teammates. And then for every other kid in your rotation, whether they're from your team or not. And I hated it. I was like, Dean and Jamie, why are you making me do this? I don't want to do this. And that's probably one of the best things that I learned, was you can sit through that even if it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, and even like congratulating people, like I kind of know how these kids feel, and it's like you just feel it in the pit of your stomach, and you don't want to congratulate somebody for maybe doing very good, but I'm like, you know what? I mean, I think it makes you a lot stronger as an individual if you show that gratitude and you're like, hey, you know what? Good job. Even though it just hurts to say it, because you know, it's like I think that builds a lot of confidence in yourself.
Absolutely.
Over time.
Yeah,
for sure. So coming from that moment,
what did you do
sitting
next?
there and watching,
right.
what was the next step? How
So
did you...
next step was, after a few months, you know, because it was
Sitting
like
with
the
it.
worst. Like I would be getting ready to go to work. I'm just like, this sucks, you know? And I would be on my counter in my condo in Tennessee, and I'd just be like drinking my coffee, going like, oh man, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna keep going? And I would go to work, and I'd be working with people, and I would be feeling this, but I would have to be like trying to motivate people to work out,
Right,
because
that was what you.
And I was like, gosh, I can't get away from it. I just want to be
miserable for a little bit.
Can I just be miserable for a bit? And so, you know, after a while, I kind of like got on my own. I was like, okay, there's gonna be 2 different ways you can go. First things, obviously, I could quit. I was like, hey. People would be like, great job.
Right.
You gave it
hell of an effort.
You gave it 2 great efforts. You didn't. Everybody would be like, good job. You know, nobody could fault me for it.
Right.
And then the other part was, or I can actually still try to do everything I possibly can within the rules of Olympic Games, of course.
Right.
To see how much more how much further I can take this, because I was like, this is not done. I was like, I know it. I was like so close. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was, and I just debated for a long time, like in a dark room, kind of like, you know, like this, and with my lamp showing on the yellow notebook, and I was just like, what am I going to do here? And I was like, okay, well, I guess there's one thing I'm going to do, is I'm like, there's a lot of different things I could do, and I even imagined like the sport of track and field, just going like, come on, man, like you really think you're going to like continue for 4 more years?
Right.
And I was like, nope. I was like, you know, this is something I got to do. I was like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do everything I possibly can. I'm gonna uncover every stone I can, and I'm gonna keep this going.
Yeah,
that's awesome. So I know we were kind of talking a little bit. That is when you really decided, you know, that piece of the mental performance of the sport psychology was one of those stones left unturned from your first 2 attempts.
Yeah.
So how did you get that on your radar?
Well, there were times, like even before the 2000 trials and like in 1998 and stuff, that I sort of like would work with a sports psychologist, because maybe I was like still acting like I was a college kid.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
right.
Still going out with my friends Friday night, Saturday night, and like, you know, spending a lot of time. And I needed help with just learning, like, hey man, you can't do this. Or also like working through injuries. I had a few injuries, and I needed to work through it. And I'm like, well, I guess I'll have to go see this guy and see what he's got to say.
Yeah.
You know? And it was, you know, somewhat beneficial. And then I got to the point where after Olympic trials, I was like, okay, I'm going to see what this is all about. Like I cannot. It was almost like in '96, I was in over my head.
Yeah.
You know. And I was like, don't miss. Okay. And then in 2000, I was like super motivated, but then I was overtrained. And I was like, okay, I'm starting to learn a few things about how I can be.
Yep.
I was like, I need to know how I can be. And so luckily, you know, Tennessee had a sports psychology department and a full-time sports psychologist there, Joe Whitney. And I was, you know, I went to go see him. And, you know, the initial parts were just that I had to start learning how to like, this was like the breakdown. I mean, I told him my situation and told him everything, and it was like at first I just had to like start living like an Olympian.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? like I can't go out like Thursday night, Friday night like I
Right.
used to in college and
Yep.
just be like and think like I was going to be an Olympian, because at that point it was still just being an Olympian.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? It wasn't even like gold medalist yet.
Yeah.
So, you know, I just had to do that, and then I had to learn how to train like an Olympian, how I had to be, and like how I had to be on time, certain little things like that. Like I was learning all the little fundamental details that I had to do in order to become or to live and train like an Olympian.
Absolutely.
Okay? And then it just started getting a little bit deeper as time as time goes on, because when I started living like an Olympian and started creating my my meal plan for the week, and then I was always on time, and even if I started to be on time, I would because I would show up to practice and there would be like nobody there like all the time.
Right.
Like, it was the same thing. It was like I weight trained pretty much on my own and gymnastic on my own and sprinted and stuff. But it's like if I was late, I was like I would have to like punish myself.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that
Yeah.
'Cause
discipline.
nobody
you don't
was
have
there,
that
and so I would
someone
have to
else,
like
yeah.
I would have to like come up with punishments because I was like, you're late. And I was
Yeah.
like, come on, man, that's like taking it over the top. Like this is what's going on in the head. Like,
Right, right.
Yeah.
But I was like, nope. You already know by the last 4 to 5 years that and the other 2 failures, you need to do this in order to get better. And so I did, and so I would do things like that. Then it got even more involved, where in my meetings with Joe, it was like he got me focused more on the goal setting part.
Yep.
And I was always sort of like goal setting because Coach Ralph would get me into that, and we would use that. But he got me even more into goal setting. Like he got me to thinking about like what's the biggest goal that you could possibly think of.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Dream goal.
And this is around 2000, and I was like, well, he's like, I need you to think about that.
Right.
And then
Take some time.
And then you're gonna have to think about a way to see it every day.
Yeah.
Try to become it every day,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And so I was like, okay, like whatever. But at this point, I was like 28. I was at wit's end. I was like, I have to believe in this now.
Right. Yeah.
I was like, I have no other options. I'm
all
I've
out of
exhausted
options.
all
I'm
other
exhausted.
avenues.
You know what I mean?
Let's
So I was like, I had the
buy
white flag
into
up.
it.
I had the white
Yep.
flag up. I was like, okay, just tell me what to do. So again, back to the room, back to the lamp thing. I was like, okay, I think the biggest goal I could ever think of. You know what I mean? I was like, and it kind of made me feel awful even to think about it because I wasn't even close. But I was like, the biggest goal is like to win a gold medal.
Yeah.
In Athens, and I was like, "Oh gosh, are you kidding
Right. Even
me?"
just putting it into your own head.
Even just putting it in my head, I was like, "Come on, is there anything else? Like maybe some other way I could like something other."
But that was it.
Something else that's bigger.
Yeah.
And I was like, again, being at the end of the rope, I was like, "That's it."
That's it.
Yeah.
And then I had to think of a way to see it every day and think about it every day. So I was like, well, my mom got me a computer, okay, because I jumped 19 feet, so she got me a computer.
I love that.
So I was like, well, now I need an email address. So I was like, might as well like try to like somehow put it into like my email address.
Okay.
And my roommates and I at the time were playing. I mean, we were playing. This is how long ago. It was like Nintendo 64 or something.
I love it.
And we were playing GoldenEye. It was like GoldenEye was like a 007 GoldenEye video game, and I was like, well, maybe GoldenEye. I was like, maybe I can somehow relate it to that. And
Yes.
I was like, okay, gold medal in Athens. I was like, somehow that has to be
That has
involved
to
with
be
my
there.
email,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I was like, okay, but it can't be too crazy because I don't want anybody to know. 'cause
No,
it's
right,
mine,
yeah.
you know? So I was like, so I just wrote a whole bunch of things down. I was like, gold medal in Athens at AOL.com.
Yep.
I was like, no, that's that's even too crazy
right
for
there.
me. And then
Yeah.
I probably wrote about 10, 20 different things and crossed them out and wrote more. And then I was like, finally came to the perfect one, and I was like, this is it. I was like, this is it. And it was gold, it was gold, and then the letter N, and then Athens at
I
AOL.com.
love that.
Yeah, so gold, the letter N, and then Athens. And I was like, okay, that's borderline. Like, people might be like, what the heck is this? You know?
Right.
But then, so I was like, I felt so good, like, I was like, that's the one. That's just going to do it. And I'm going to type it every day, because at that point you had to type your email.
Right.
You had to type your email to log in. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe there was an easier way. I didn't know about it, but I knew I had to type it in every morning to see, emails. And so I was like, oh man, what if like somebody asks me what it is, I was like, what am I going to say? Gold in Athens?
Yeah.
I was like, nope. I was like, I'm going to say it's Gold Nathans, like the name.
Yep.
Okay.
And if they asked, I was just going to get out of there as fast as possible. So came up with that email, Golden Athens, and, you know, told Joe, and he was like, that's fantastic. And so at that point, at that point, and that's what I even tell kids nowadays. I'm like, look, you have to think about something where it is absolutely out there.
Yeah.
Because, I kind of went through it. That was absolutely like, I felt horrible. I'm like, how dare you even think
Right.
of
It didn't even seem inspiring
I
at
was
that
like,
point.
that's for somebody else more worthy of something like that. That's for like the phenoms right out of high school. And I was like, come on, man. But even then I was like, no. I was like, again, I was forced to believe it because I had to.
Yeah.
So I tell the kids, like, think of something that you obviously think you could probably not accomplish, but that should be your goal, and you need to see it every day. I was like, write it on your mirror, do something, use your imagination. I was like, there's so many things nowadays. Put it on your phone. Maybe it's your passcode. I don't know.
Right. And almost like be willing for it to be a little silly.
Yeah.
Be willing for it to be almost embarrassing that, you know, what am I going to do if somebody asks me what the heck does this email address means? And then you're going to have to kind of talk your way around it, and they're probably going to be like, who the heck are you?
And
what
what
are you
happened
doing?
over time, when I didn't realize it at the time, I thought it was just like I had to see it every day. But really, it was like the magnitude of that goal is like a huge oak tree, right? And every time I typed it, it was like just hacking away at it with a little knife every day. But over time, at the beginning, the first year or so would be like,
right.
Sure, whatever. But over time, it was just goldenathens.com. And then all of a sudden, it was like started to become part of me.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then if somebody asked, I was like, it's Golden Athens. They'd be like, what does that mean? I was like, don't worry about it. See you later.
Yeah.
Because my competitors would ask me what my email was because they'd be like, hey, I want to email you, man. And I'm like, yeah, cool, okay.
Right. Those are the last people I wanted to ask.
But it was like, there's only like three people. It was like me, Joe, and my coach. We were pretty much the only people that really knew about
what
it.
that really was.
Yeah.
People could probably figure it out, like my roommates and stuff, but didn't feel comfortable.
Wow.
It wasn't for anybody else, so that was a big starting point with working with him.
That's really cool. I don't know if I've ever really thought of something as, it seems minimal, but it is so monumental in that grand scheme of things.
I know, and it's like I can't express it enough when I'm like, you guys might think this is funny, but it's like, no, you got to see it. Do something, write it down. Then write it on your mirror, and then like rub it off at the end of the day. Write it in the morning. Figure it out. You got to use your imagination.
Right. It's so funny. I'm working with a runner right now. He's, he's just one of those kids that you just got to love the kid. Like, he just is such a dedicated athlete. He does all the things that you kind of were talking about. And, he had a great start to this cross-country season, didn't quite hit his time at the last meet. And, we kind of talked through it. But, I think something that could be so beneficial for him is put your passcode as the time that you want.
It's as small as that.
He will be getting a text directly after this episode to be like, hey, by the way, this is what I want you to try.
He might be like,
right. It might seem ridiculous, but something as simple as
day you're putting
put the
that in.
score,
well, now
put the
hopefully
time.
his friends don't hear this because then they'll get him.
I think, but he's the kid that he's like, I'm going to tell everybody on my team to do the same thing. Like, that's just kind of the kid that he is.
But yeah, so it's all those little things that go into having that extra crucial piece to getting that step ahead.
Yeah.
And then that spurs you on. Like, so that's like 2000, 2001. And then, 2000, I ended up, it was 2001, I ended up going to the Goodwill Games.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then I also, as I started implementing a lot of these little details and a lot of the things like in preparation and working with Joe and working on, trying to be the most mentally tough person out there, trying to be the most prepared person out there, because I would go through preparation like crazy. I was like, if I'm not the best person physically out there, then I'm going to be the most prepared and the most mentally tough at least.
Yep. Absolutely.
And then, of course, I'm going to try to be, physically as good as them as well over time. But over time, when some of these things started working, everything started working. You know what I mean? And I was like, oh my gosh,
it's working.
You're like, oh dang.
This is actually like, I'm going to keep it going. I'm like, I'm going to make a big deal out of it.
It stops feeling so far away.
Right. And so I went like in 2001, the U.S. Championships was like for the world champion. It was like there was a qualification for the Worlds, and it was like a crummy day in Eugene, Oregon, and we knew that, Joe and I, and so we worked on preparing for that. And and going through my cues.
Yeah.
He was like, and he was very instrumental in making me like have a little notebook and also like writing down what I needed to work on. And as the bigger meets came around, it would be like 2 things,
Right.
And just, I mean, I don't know how many pole vaulters will be out there, but it's like my cues were like keep my posture and hit my arms. So it was just like stay up in arms. That was it.
Yeah.
And I had that written down, and I would repeat it to myself. And he's like, and then he's like, okay, it's going to be, and we would focus on how to prepare for the meet in Eugene, Oregon.
Yeah.
Which most likely was going to be raining.
Yep.
And it was going to be cool.
Yep.
And the conditions were not going to be good. And so I was already preparing on like, okay, conditions aren't going to be very good.
Right.
You're going to focus on keeping your posture and hitting your arms. Of course, you go to the competition and it's drizzling, raining.
Yep.
So during the whole thing, I'm like, just put yourself in another place for 4 hours. That's it.
And it's not ideal, but you had been there mentally so many times before. You had already been successful in those conditions before. You knew exactly how it was going to go already.
And there were times in the whole competition, it was keep your posture and hit your arms. Well, what about this and what about that? And over time, of course, like I said before, it's like I was at my wit's end. I had to believe in it. There was no other options.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, no, you're going to focus on your cues. I already tried too hard, and that doesn't work. I tried to tell myself not to miss, and that doesn't work. I was like, so just focus on 2 things.
Right.
Yep.
So, and then all of a sudden, I was like, on 3rd attempts, like in pole vault, you get 3 attempts at each height, and the 3rd attempt is obviously the most important, because if you miss that, you're out of the competition. So I was making like bars on 3rd attempts and stuff, and like, and then I made the world team, and it was like phenomenal. And then that also, that also propelled me to the Goodwill Games that same year. And so, did good enough at the World Championships, and I got 9th.
Wow.
Okay. And I jumped fairly well. I jumped 18:10. I jumped 18 feet to get there. So, however, they only pay the top 8. So of course, I was pretty upset about that. But when you get to the final in a World Championship, you get to go to more competition, which is good. So then that was a little stepping stone. So I went to some competitions in Europe and was able to start. Now I was starting to be a professional and starting to make money and get a little bit of a reputation. And then Goodwill Games came around, and of course a lot of this mental part had come full circle again, because I had to focus on it again, because during my exploits in Europe, there was a point where I got to the Goodwill Games in Brisbane, Australia, and I was like, I got there like 10 days before the competition, but I couldn't like hardly run. Because the sides of my legs were like, I was like overtrained sort of again. And so, and I honestly, I would go to the track and I was like, I'm in deep trouble here. Like I would try to run,
like something,
and I could not run.
Yeah.
I was trying to get different shoes, and I was getting, because at that point I could like ask Nike. I was like, hey, can I get some different shoes? And they would bring shoes, and I was like, that's not going to work.
That's not going to help.
And the clock started ticking, and I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? Just when things started, I started figuring things out. It just started getting more difficult. So I was like, okay, I got 10 days here. I was like, I learned enough that I'm just going to make sure I'm going to, ice them. I'm going to take my anti-inflammatories, and I'm going to watch video. But then what I also started doing, with help from Joe, is I started doing a lot of rehearsal.
Yes.
A lot of repetitions. And I was like, I can't run, but I can walk in my room, and it will not hurt.
Yeah.
And so this is like, went on for like, not 10 days, but close to it, like 9 days. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to go run. And everybody was like, hey, we're going to go to the on a safari at the zoo, because, in Brisbane, in Australia, there's like humongous like zoos there. And I'm just like, no, I'm not. I can't go, because I'll be walking around, and
that's going to not set me up for success.
Flare up my legs again. So I was in my room, and I would just do my thing, and then I would rehearse, and I would go through my rehearsal, and there were certain things I had to do at the time technically, and I'd be like walking in my room. Luckily I didn't have a roommate, so I would walk in my room, and I would just go through 9, because I would count my strides. In pole vaulting, you have to count your strides. So there's certain things that have to happen on certain strides, and so I would go through everything I possibly could and be like 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then I would like mimic exactly how I would do it in the real meet, and I did that and this is like going on like days. You know what I mean? And then I would watch the movie or something and get away from it, and then I'd get back. So I had like a kind of a series of, I would go through it like 4 times a day or something like that, right? But then, I was going into the competition, and got to the competition, and I was like, okay, here it is. I didn't test it much at all.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I started warming up, and I was like, kind of feel pretty good.
Yeah.
I think they just needed to cool down
Right.
a little bit,
But
right?
that's scary when you're 10
Yeah.
days out.
And this is like big time. This
Yeah.
is like, and everybody
Yeah.
who was at Edmonton who beat me
Yep.
is pretty much
Was
at this
here.
meet.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you kind of
it's
have
like-
to like, you got to be on
Nobody
your,
was going to say it, but everybody kind of
Right.
knew what was
this
going
was a
on.
big deal, right?
Yeah.
And so, and I started warming up and I was like, I don't feel it. I think
I think
I think I'm good. And then I went out to warm up and I just remember like taking, well, you usually use like, let's say to keep it simple, pole number 1
Yep.
in
Yeah.
competition is like that's what pole you're going to use no matter what.
Right.
And so I would normally, have not too much of a difficult time with it, but I could get off the ground and
Yep.
and have a successful jump. But I was going, I went through my imagery so much that I was vaulting, and the first jump I took, I did exactly what I had imagined. And I was like, what I normally am used to, I felt like I was like, my legs were like lightning bolts.
Yeah.
And like I was just like superhuman, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, I'm actually doing it.
You're like,
Yeah.
there's so
it
many times I
worked?
couldn't
Yeah.
believe it, and I was like,
Right.
okay, I'm just gonna go with this. So I went to like stiffer pole, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is working like
perfectly. Yeah.
you know what I mean? So I just kept going with it, ended up winning that competition.
Oh my gosh.
You know what I mean? Beat
Yeah.
everybody that beat me at Worlds.
Yep.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And then the big thing was this was like in 2001, so I actually won like 20 grand, which at
Yeah.
the time was like,
Like,
I'm a
what?
millionaire. I'm like, I'm a
Right?
millionaire, right? But minus taxes and agent fees and stuff,
Right.
it wasn't much. But I could be like, now I can quit my job and train full time. So it was like those times where I failed, or not failed the most, but had the most doubt.
Yes.
Right.
Where I had failed the most, or where I thought things were the worst, like getting 9th, which is good, but what I mean, like
In this-
I didn't
in
make
the
any money in
scheme,
the,
yeah.
in the scheme of things. And then Goodwill games where I thought like I am not going to be able to clear anything, but then I was
Right.
just like, nope, we're going to use these skills
And
we're gonna develop them.
committed to them
100
and just
100%.
like you
Yeah.
bought in,
I
and there
was
was
100%.
no question of, is this going to work? It's going
and
to.
the weird thing is what I found is when you do that, you forget about the negative things. You put all your energy into the repetition and into what you're going to do. Then all of a sudden, all the doubt,
All the what if,
you kind of
what
like
if this?
forget about
Yeah.
it.
Right.
You're just like, oh, wait a minute, did my legs
This is
hurt?
what I'm going to
No.
do.
Yeah, and you could have very easily fallen into the, oh crap,
I'm-
what am I going to do?
Yeah.
I'm going to sit
Yeah.
here and feel sorry for myself.
And
And,
then, like-
again, nobody would have
Like,
faulted
yep,
you.
I'm just going to go on and have fun at the zoo.
Yeah,
and
Right,
walk
because
yeah.
it's not
around
going to
and-
go well, so I might as well enjoy
Yeah,
my
might as
time
well-
here.
yeah.
But again, you were
Dedicated.
last option was
Yeah.
let me listen to what Joe said and just completely trust that this is going to work.
So, yeah.
And there was no question mark at the end of it anymore.
So then
Yeah.
the pieces, obviously are starting to
together.
work, where
Yeah.
it's like, okay, now I know repetitions work. Now I know what I need to do to be successful. You know what I mean? And then from there, of course, I took the video from 2001 World Championships
Yep.
because I was still mad about that. And I was like, there's something going on here, and there were some technical things that I saw. Like I actually took the video from that meet, the TV video, because the camera was in a fixed spot.
Right.
And and so I knew everybody was in the same. It was in like the same. The camera's in the same spot, so everybody was running the same. You
Yep.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yep.
And the pole, and I'm like, there's something funny here. Everybody's dropping the poles a certain way, like everybody's sort of like, it looks different than what I'm doing. You know what
Okay.
I mean? And so I actually took a dry erase marker, and I was in my living room, and I was like, and then we didn't have the flat screens. This is like a tube, 27-inch. It was a pretty nice one, but
Yep.
I took like a dry erase marker, and I was like, I'm just going to put a mark on the TV, of where
Yeah.
the poles were.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Because like when you drop a pole in pole vaulting, it's like critical.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was as critical as it was, but I was like, everybody's was different. So halfway down the runway, theirs was all a lot higher than mine was. Basically, it means like I was holding the pole up. So you're basically
Right.
holding a weight
Yeah.
Yeah.
while they're dropping it, and they're able to just run freely.
Yeah.
Right.
And I found that, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know why, but I was like, I need to look like that.
Yeah.
But then it was like, it started, it's like 2001, and I was like, man, if I do this, if I make this change, I knew enough, because
It
I was like
changes a lot,
29, 30,
yeah.
and I'm like, if I'm starting to make this change, it's going to take a while, because I'm
Yeah.
ingrained.
Right. You're
Right.
going to
But
have
I
to
was
break
like,
that muscle memory.
I am going to hit a lull. I know
Yeah.
it. I mean, I'm like, I'm not stupid at this point. I was like, I knew exactly what was going to happen. I was like, can you handle it? Are you willing to take the risk?
Take the risk, absolutely.
Of changing this in order to, improve
Yeah.
yourself? Because I was like, if I can just get on there on playing the same turf, then I think it'll be good. And of course, Joe helped me out a lot because he gave me this one question I would always ask myself that he would want me to ask myself if I ever came into the crossroads. It was like, is it going to get you closer to gold in Athens? And if I answered that yes, then I would do it.
Then you do it. And I think that goes back to when you went to Tennessee, where you saw the guys that were bigger, faster, stronger, and you wanted to do what they did, even if it meant you had to kind of change everything you were doing. That personality trait almost that you learned there and solidified there came back in a slightly different way. But you said, what are the best of the best doing? Let me
how do I get there?
Physically draw it out, and then I need to do that.
Yeah.
I want to push myself out of my comfort zone to do what the best of the best are doing.
And of course, coaches obviously are super important, but in reality, it's like you sort of find out what the best people are doing.
And then you start to do it.
I mean, and at that point, I was getting a lot older and smarter, so now I was started to work on percentages on like what gives me the best chance to do well. And I was like, well, if 90% of the vaulters that are beating me are doing this and this, I didn't know at the time yet exactly technically what it did, but I was like, then I probably need to do that.
Right. The numbers weren't lying
because
at
the numbers
that
weren't,
point.
and so I trusted the numbers, and then I was like, okay, is it going to get me closer? I was like, yeah, it's not going to get me further.
Exactly.
It might if I can take the initial learning curve.
And you knew that there was going to be that learning curve going into it. I think a lot of athletes, you have to have the tolerance almost to have it decrease a little bit. And a lot of them, they make a change and it doesn't work right away. And they're like, well, I'm abandoning ship.
Right.
I'm going to, go back to what I was doing or find something else. Like, you have to stick with it long enough for it to it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yes. And that is a big thing. It's like, that's where I tell a lot of the kids that I'm coaching, I'm like, look, this is the most important part. Okay. Did it feel bad?
Yeah.
Yeah, it felt horrible. I was like,
good, it's working.
Bad is good.
This
is like Bizarro world.
I know. And when I was
bad is good, and if it feels normal, then that's not good.
I was saying, and I used to tell that to the gymnasts I was coaching all the time. They're like, it felt weird. I'm like, well, that means it was different. And different is not bad in this sport. That's how we make progress. And there's always one skill on bars where, it came down to physics. If you start from higher, the timing is going to change. You have to drop faster, which changes your opening. The physics of it all have to catch up. And they're like, well, it was scary because it felt weird. And I'm like, good. That means you're trying to do something different. You're working through that uncomfortable feeling. And then all of a sudden it works. And they're like, huh. And I'm like, yeah.
And I'll stress, like, look, this is where people get to. This is where people get to. And they feel like, oh, it's too weird. I can't do it. So then they'll just go back to what feels comfortable. I was like,
it's hard
your body's
going
to want to feel comfortable. It's going to always sort of want to leak over there. But if you don't watch it, you know what I mean? Then all of a sudden you're back over there. So it's like, your body's going to want to do that. That's fine. But I'm also here as a coach to guide you in the right direction.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And that's where, you lean on your support systems. And, I think being in that uncomfortable state is not fun, but the more you can subject yourself to it, the easier it gets to be there.
Right.
So you got to go one more day than you think you can. It feels weird. Do it for one more day and then revisit and then go one more day from there.
That's good.
If you don't, right?
See, I should have known that. That would have helped.
Right.
Thanks.
And that's what
still
I was going to
learning.
say. And that's really, you were kind of asking us before we recorded, how
You're
did
gonna
we
use
get
that,
to this? Please do, right? Half the things that I've, used in coaching, I've gotten from other people. So, we always said, how did the podcast come to be? And it was, we would all have, our respective athletes. We'd sit at our big conference table, and these were the conversations that we would start to have. And somebody would say something offhand. We're like, wait a minute, somebody write that down, because that's it. That's the thing.
Yeah,
we need to know what that is so that we can start to tell athletes that. So then eventually we were like, let's start actually getting this recorded so we can rewind it and replay it again. So,
but and so throughout that journey between 2000 2004 you're adding in all of these like little things, little steps that, and you're starting to see them pay off in competitions. But getting to 2004, you make the Olympics.
Right. So like I thought, maybe I was being prophetic though, but I did take a little dip in my height wise in 2003. But I was still like, nope, this is going to work. So then 2004 rolls around, and of course, this is Olympics. This is like the year, and it was starting to come around, and things were really coming together. There were other things that happened too that I had to learn to help me get through technical things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there were other things where I was like learning how to run better, and I was like, oh yeah, why don't I just do that differently?
Yeah.
So it's like, will that be a, is that going to get me closer to
Yeah.
gold? And yes. So
Yeah.
then I had, there's certain things where like I built my own sled, my running sled to help me with my running technique.
Yeah.
So it's like I just started like, it's funny when you get on when you get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
It's like
Just keep
you just
going.
keep
Just
going.
keep
And
going.
you just start coming up with things, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I
Objects
can
in
do
motion stay in
Yeah.
motion. Yeah.
So 2004 rolls around, and we get about a few months out from Olympic trials, and of course my meetings with Joe were going great, and this is another big turning point, because Joe would be like, hey man, he was like, I got to tell you something. This is like a couple months before like Olympic trials. He's like, I'm like, oh yeah, what? He's like, how's things going? I was like, things are going great. I feel like practice is going awesome. I feel, you know what I mean? I got my meals down.
Right,
my
everything
cues
feels
are down.
good, yeah.
My preparation's key. And he's like, oh yeah. He's like, that's great. He's like, yeah. He's like, Tim, he's like, just one thing I got to tell you. He's like, you might not make the team. And I was like,
Like, Joe, what are you
4
talking about?
years. We're working
he's
on
like, yeah, he's like, it might just not be your day. And I was just like, you get those images of you jumping over the table and just like starting to punch him in the face. And I was like, oh my God, my back started getting hot. My
Yeah,
ears.
right,
I was
everything's
like,
just tense
I was like,
up.
I'm dead. I was like, I'm not making the team. I was like, I was like, how could you do this?
Right,
Like,
why would you say
why
that?
would you even say that now? Like, that's ridiculous. And I was like, wanted to get out of there. I'm just feeling uncomfortable. And I'm just like, I'm dead. I'm not coming back from this. No,
Yeah.
I'm not making it. He's like, yeah. And he just kind of kept going. And I was just like, oh my gosh, you better shut up. Right now.
Right, because Joe's going to be in
But-
danger.
And he knew I was getting really uncomfortable because I was like, how am I going to get out of this? It's over. It was like, I was like, dude, you're the one that made me think of gold
Right.
Athens.
Yeah.
Now you're telling me I'm not making the team.
Right, like,
Right.
how dare
Couple months
you?
out.
But he
yeah.
was like, no, he's like, you got to tell me something. He's like, you got to tell me now, like why you're going to.
Why you're going
to.
Yeah.
And so I was so pissed. I was like, I went off for like 5 or 10 minutes. And I was like, because I had to come up with my own programs. I had to punish myself for being late. I had to go find my own, chiropractors and
Yeah.
massage therapists, and I trained on my own, and I came up with my own numbers and my periodization schedule, and then I changed the way I dropped the pole, then I changed, and I built a sled, and then I
Yep.
did all this other stuff. And he's like, so after about 10-minute rant, he was like, you know what I mean? And I was like out of breath. He's like, good. He's like, I just wanted to make sure
Right.
you knew that. And I was like, I walked out of there like 10 feet tall.
Yeah, right. And Joe's sitting there with a smile on his face
But
the whole
I was like,
time.
I think I told him, I was like, that was a big risk, man.
Yeah, right?
Because that could
Right.
have gone real bad.
That
Yeah.
could have crumbled.
But
a
he
lot,
knew, but he knew that was the big dragon in the room. That was the big monster.
Yeah.
That I had to overcome because it was going to come up.
Yep.
And
Someone was going to say it eventually.
eventually,
and,
that
yeah.
thought was going to get in my head, and he knew it. And
Yep.
and
And
he
And I
like,
think
let's work
that
on
it.
is
Took it.
so critical. And, we sometimes have these tough conversations with kids where I'm like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you everything you want to hear some days. There are some
know.
days where I'm
I
going to
gotta
tell
challenge
you.
you.
I'm going to
Yeah.
challenge you. And you can hate me for the day. I will, as your
Yeah.
coach, as your mental performance coach, I'm okay if
take
you
it.
don't like
Right,
me today.
right.
Because this is, you need to start confronting that fear head on and be visibly uncomfortable when I
Right.
ask you those questions.
Yeah, and I think it took many years to get to that point.
Yeah.
Where he
Right.
probably felt comfortable saying it, but it couldn't have come at a better time because then of course I went to the trials, of course the preparation, the cues, focusing on a couple of things at once. I was down to my third attempt at Olympic trials,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
it was like if I lost or if I missed it, basically I would have got fourth.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But I went, luckily I was just like, you are focusing on two things. Keep your posture and hit your arms. And that's all you're going to do. And I mean, this is like,
It's like the end of the
this is
movie.
like the end of it. And it's
Yeah.
like, this is the real deal. This
Yeah.
is it.
Right.
You're on the runway and the clock's ticking down and you're thinking just two things. And so you go and, I made the bar,
Yep.
Yep.
made the Olympic team and actually jumped a personal best, tied a personal best and got the Olympic trials record.
Wow.
I mean, that I wasn't
Yeah.
even thinking about
Right.
that,
It wasn't.
you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Right, yeah.
That
I
wasn't
was like,
that wasn't the big
And
goal.
again,
So-
after that, I was just like, oh my gosh, the
really
major
did that.
goal was gold in Athens,
Yeah.
and that
Right.
was it. But I was like, I really wasn't thinking about breaking the record.
Yeah,
That's cool.
but
I mean,
Yeah.
right. That's just an
Happens
extra
along the
bonus
way.
along the way.
yeah, and so
And then you use
start
that.
buying in. You start buying into it, and then you go to Athens because the Olympics was about a month or so away,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so you go there, and it's just like the same thing, and then. We just had to ramp things up even more because there's more distractions.
Yeah.
You
Right,
go to the
yeah.
Olympic Village, there's more distractions. We were on the island of Crete,
Yeah.
like a couple of about a couple of weeks before the games, because we were late in the games. So we went on the island of Crete, and that was like our training place, because they wanted us away from the village because it was still close to 2000 from 9/11, you know what I mean? And so they wanted to keep us safe. And so we went on the island of Crete, and I was like, oh man, this is like, we were on paradise basically. We were at this resort. And I was like, this is crazy. I was like, this is I felt like too comfortable.
You're like something.
So then I would go, and I would go to the beach, and I would just dog cuss myself for about 30 minutes walking down the beach. And I was like, you're here for business. You're going to keep your posture. You're going to hit your arms. There's going to be, you might come down to a third attempt, but you better keep your posture and hit, what I mean? It was just like.
Those were non-negotiables at that point. Then
I would come back, and I would have dinner, with everybody, and they'd be like, how you doing? I'd be like, I'm good. How's it going? Because, I mean, it's just something I had to do.
Yeah, that level of discipline that you had trained for so long.
I had to continue going. Then you go to the village, and it was like more craziness going on. I was like, nope. I had everything like written down. It was like, now it was like the end of the movie where it's like, this is the deal. This is it now.
Right.
This is like, I'm a couple days out. Everything matters. And if anybody's going to, like, I will be the only one that's going to screw this up. I am not going to be, I'm not going to let anybody else
Nobody else is that special that they get to ruin it. So it's like, I had everything scheduled, like when I was waking up, when I was going to breakfast, when I would go to practice. And this was all in my notebook with my cues and everything. And I even had scheduled when I wasn't going to think about anything. Which is important too.
Like when I was like, okay, just chill for a little bit, And so, and if I had written down I was going to go to lunch at 12 o'clock, right? And because I was living with, or not living, but I was like in the same, you room with your competitors. Sometimes. So I'm rooming with Derek Miles, who is like my competitor. And Toby Stevenson, who is the other guy who had jumped higher than me that year, American guy. We're all in this like the same suite. And they're like, hey man, we're going to go to lunch. And then I'd be watching like Lord of the Rings or something.
Nice.
I'd be watching that on my computer, and then they'd be like, hey, come on, let's go to lunch. And if it was like 11:58, I'd just go like this. And they'd be like, no, I'll be there in a few minutes. And I was like, I do not care.
I said I'm going to lunch at noon. I'm going to keep that. It's like keeping a promise to yourself.
If that mattered, I don't know. But it mattered at the moment. I mean, I was conserving energy like crazy. Like it was about 100 meters down the road. You could easily walk to go eat lunch. But I would sit there, and I would just wait for the trolley. And I'm like, I'm conserving this energy. So I was
in those kinds of moments, there's so many things you cannot control. Taking advantage of the things that you can, giving yourself that.
Was that the difference? I don't know, but taking control was the difference.
Exactly, and being in that headspace that you knew was going to serve you best, and that was a part of that.
And the funny thing is, you might be like worried, like, oh my gosh, what are people going to think? But you know what? Doesn't really matter.
Be the weird one.
People will just be like, okay, we'll see you over there, and then they won't think anything of it.
Exactly.
I mean, you probably think it's more of a burden than they will. So then that comes up, and then you get to the preliminaries, and I mean this is the deal. And so I continue to go on. Preliminaries went as planned, nothing too major, but it was just keeping everything going.
Steps.
It was the process. Keep the process going, and the energy of the situation will carry everything out. And then you get to the final. This is it. It's like the top 15 guys in the world.
The best of the best.
And it was like gold in Athens. It's like, what are you going to do now? So you're walking out there. And luckily, 4 years earlier, Joe and I had worked on, when you walk out into the field, you're going to be the most mentally tough person out there. And we walked out there, and I had a hat like this, so I, worn down like this so I wouldn't look at the crowd because I didn't want to see anybody. Everybody else was just kind of like, wow.
Trying to
crazy.
take it in.
And I was like, what's the wind doing? Because my coach and I, we got together, and we're like, this is the plan. And if anything else goes wrong, don't worry about it. You were just doing this and this.
This is the plan,
And I was like, okay, which way is the wind going? Because the wind direction is a big deal in vaulting because you're carrying a big pole. So I knew the wind was favorable, and I'm like, okay, plan's good to go. Let's go warm up, blah, blah, blah. And then the meet goes on, bam, 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 throughout the competition. Toby Stevenson, the other American, was ahead of me. Like at 18, because the bars are always like predetermined when you go there. So you know what the bars are going to be that you jump at. So maybe on like the third bar, I think Toby had cleared it on his first. And I cleared it on my second. So basically he was ahead of me the whole time. It was basically going to come down to probably one of us because he had jumped the highest and I won Olympic trials. And so we were just kind of like battling, going back and forth. Got to the point where it was like 19-4. And so, it's getting up there, and we both cleared that. So we basically he was still ahead of me at that point. So then the bar goes to 595, which is the Olympic record. You know what I mean? And it was more than I had cleared, you
Yeah.
know? And so it's like, you know, you got to put, you know, what I tell people is like, you know, you put yourself in that situation. This is like that moment.
is
now.
Oh, yeah,
This
right?
is it.
This
There's
is-
only there's
Yeah.
only minutes left at
Yeah.
this point, you know? So the bar goes in 595, and this, you know, Toby had cleared it that year. He cleared 6 meters, which was like 19.9.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the bar was,
boy.
no,
Yeah.
19.8, and then the bar was at 19.6. So like I took a jump and I missed, and I was
Okay.
like, okay, you know, just getting, you know, you're just getting a feel for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Toby took a jump and he missed, and then comes a second attempt.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
He's still ahead of me.
I'm
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'm getting worked
still
up.
ahead of
I'm like, I know how it ends.
so I take a jump, you know what I mean? And I missed, and I just remember landing, and I was like, oh my God. I just, you
Yeah.
know, that searing heat on my back just
Yeah.
hit me, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm going to get silver. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Because I had
Yeah,
won a
yeah,
jump
yeah.
count,
Yep.
and I was
Yeah.
like, oh my God. I started panicking like crazy, you know what I mean? I was like grabbing the pole, and I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And eventually I was like, wait a minute, idiot. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And I would just, you know,
Yeah,
you talk
right.
to
That's,
yourself
I was going to say
that.
that.
You talk to yourself that way
Yeah.
sometimes, and I was like, man, your email was gold in Athens for 4 years, idiot.
Right.
You know, so then you think about it, and you're like, when I got that 4 years before, I did not know that was
wasn't
going to
even-
come down
yeah.
to the last moment.
Right.
So that's how crazy that is.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
right?
And
Yeah.
so I'm like, and then it was just like I just
Flip.
totally
Yep.
flip-flopped.
Right, you-
I was like, you're going to keep your posture and hit your
Yeah,
arm.
but
just
you
like
let yourself have your moment, get
Yeah.
it out of your
Yeah,
system,
yeah.
and then you're like, nope, we're not
No.
doing that anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We know what to do.
And so I went down there. I was like, Toby's gonna jump, and no, he jumped and he missed.
Okay,
He missed it,
okay.
right?
Yeah.
So I missed it.
Both on
He
third
missed it, So I was like,
attempts,
okay, we're both on third.
Like, this
attempts.
could not be more of like a
More of a
movie.
Yeah.
I know, but still, like, you know, going through, you know, it's like right now, if I miss, I have one attempt left.
Yep.
Never cleared it. Olympic record, third attempt. Toby's cleared it, you know. He's kind of like the fan favorite. He was
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of like he would like play the guitar with the pole.
Yeah, he was that
He
guy.
was
Yeah.
jumping around,
Yeah.
and I was like fine because it gave me energy. I was like, good, just lose the energy every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tommy's doing that. Yeah.
But anyway, so I was like, okay, stay up in arms. Like 8 years before that, I was at Olympic trials going, don't miss, don't miss, don't miss.
Right.
You know what I mean? Now, 8 years later, I was on the runway going, stay up in arms, stay up
Yeah.
in arms, stay up in arms. You know, I was not thinking about anything
No,
else.
right.
I was running, and everything was like going through. And it was going so much like slow motion. Like I could, like, if my pinky was in the wrong spot,
You
I feel
knew.
like I could just like change my pinky.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everything was so slow.
Because you had
Yeah.
pictured it and you
Because
had done it
I've been there a thousand.
my gosh.
more
Done
times
it
than you could
1,000
even count at that
times.
time.
Yeah. So then, you know, I hit the jump and something a little bit funny went wrong, but
Yeah.
then I just like readjusted real quick.
Yeah.
Because like I was saying arms,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
my arms kind of came through. Next thing I know, I'm over it and like barely brushing it like with my
Right,
with my
like,
shirt.
Yeah, with your shirt.
They're
But
doing
I
the
knew.
zoom in, slow
Yeah.
motion.
But
Yeah.
I knew I didn't hit it hard enough to
To knock it.
dislodge
it, yeah.
And so I just came down and I was like, bro, not more because I cleared it, but because I was like, I was able to endure through, like, you know, I was able to come
It was,
through and
yeah,
endure.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
less about the record. It was less about it.
Yeah.
It was about everything that had gone into that.
It was more that
super,
I was in that I was in deep trouble mentally for a little bit, and it was
you
almost
came
that I
back.
was able to endure and overcome so much. That was more
That
of
was it.
that was
Yeah.
more
Wow.
celebration.
That was it. Yeah.
And then, of course, in true Tim Mack fashion, I get off the pit and I was like, "You idiot!" I was like, "Toby's got one more jump. Why did you celebrate?" And then-
Right.
so I was like, okay. I was like, and I got back on it again, and I was
Yeah.
like, Toby's gonna clear it because if he cleared it, he was still ahead of me.
right.
Right. Yeah.
So I was still I would have been in silver.
So there was
position.
there was
Yeah.
that two-step
Yeah.
process where
Yeah.
you had to make it, and
And then he had
to
missed
miss.
it. So then
Yeah.
I was like, Toby's gonna. And I just kept preparing myself. I was like, I have to jump higher than him. I was like, Toby's gonna make it. Crowd's gonna go nuts.
Prepare yourself now.
You're
Yeah.
gonna clear the next bar. It was 6 meters, which was the next bar, and I was
Yeah.
like, you're gonna clear 6 meters. That's what's gonna happen.
So you already started looking towards, okay, I just accomplished something that I have never accomplished
right. And it
before,
was
and
like-
now we're
And
going.
now we're already
Yeah,
looking
right.
at the
you
next
didn't
one.
even you.
Yeah.
It's not like I am happy with it. It was just like now it became. It wasn't so much about that's the weirdest thing about the whole thing is like I know gold in Athens was like the peak, the pinnacle, but it wasn't about that at all. It started to become about like what can I overcome?
do? Yep.
And
Yeah.
it came between. It was more about me and the sport itself.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It was like how far can I take? it?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So then, I was like, he's gonna clear.
So
it.
you're
We're
locked
gonna
in
keep
for the
going.
next jump.
Yep.
And you know, it's just I would be sipping Gatorade, and I'm like, stay up and hit your arm, stay up and
Yep.
hit your arm. Toby's
Yep.
gonna make it. You know, I would tie my shoes, stay up and hit your arm. 'Cause
Yeah.
I had to do that. Maybe other people have the gift that they don't have to do it that much, but I did.
But that's what worked for you,
that's
and
what
you
worked
knew
for
that
me.
that's what you had to do
Yeah.
regardless
And so
of the situation.
And I didn't watch anybody. I didn't watch anybody jump. So I would sort of like turn my back to him, because I didn't want that image in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, he started his jump, and I just remember him going. I was like, okay, the crowd's gonna go nuts.
Right,
Gonna
you're
get 6
waiting for the
meters. I was
sound.
like grabbing I was like gonna
You're-
grab the
you're
pole.
ready
I knew
for
which
the-
pole
yep.
I was gonna use. I knew where my step was. And then I was like, okay, this is about the time when he goes over. And
Right, because you
Yeah,
knew the
I knew.
repetitions
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you
right.
knew
Yeah,
where
yeah,
he
yeah.
I
was.
was like, okay, he's going to go over, and now the crowd's going to go nuts. He's going to clear it, and we're going to go to the next bar, and you're going to make that. And then
Yep.
all of a sudden, I didn't hear like the,
You just hear the
Yeah.
I heard a, oh, like a good job.
Yeah, like a, oh.
try.
right, like
Yeah.
what a
And then
show
I was like,
for.
wait a minute. I was caught, and I was just like,
Right, you had a couple of seconds.
I look over, and I see him. I saw him, and he wore a helmet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I saw him throw it down, and then I also saw like the crossbar was like on the pit, and I was like,
Yeah. And you're like, wait, this
I'm
is
like,
the
wait.
I
moment.
was gonna say you're like somebody else
I was like, is
recognize
this-
what's happening.
I was like putting my hands in my pocket, like so uncomfortable. Like, wait a minute, what's going on?
like it didn't
I
hit
just
you.
won.
Like you
Yeah.
had to sit there
I
and
could not
look at all the pieces to
yeah, and I
process
could
what had
not-
just happened.
I couldn't stop this. I couldn't stop the
Yeah.
cycle
Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
head, and I was like, I didn't stop and go, it's over.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And my coach knew, and I was like, I got to keep jumping because I was already ready to keep
Yeah.
jumping. So I
Yeah.
went to my coach, and I didn't even really think twice about it. We didn't have like a cry session, which,
Yeah,
is,
right.
which
Yeah.
is fine. My brother actually ended up saying like, you should have cried. But,
Such a brother thing to
yeah,
say.
right. But I like went over to my coach, and he knew it. He was like, watch this. He's gonna want to keep jumping. He was telling other people, and I was like, we're gonna keep jumping, because I was like, now it's not about that at all. Now I need to jump higher. I want to see how high I can jump.
And that's where
my head,
it's
it
not
got
about
crazy.
the outcome. It is about the process. And we
Yep.
preach that.
Preach
It
that
was
over
no
and
longer
over.
about the color of the
Going
medal.
crazy, yeah.
It was, I have worked so hard for this. Let's do
Let me
it.
carry through
Let
this
me
process.
go until my body
Yeah.
has exhausted every ounce that it has. Like
Yeah.
that, I think, is just such a teachable moment of it doesn't matter. I just won the medal, not a medal. I won the medal, and I still
keep
want
it.
to do
Yeah.
more. It was
Yeah.
about more than the medal. It was about the
And
sport
that's
itself.
how crazy it was.
Yeah.
It just was kind of mind blowing at that
Yeah.
point. Well, afterwards I was like, why wasn't I like more happy? Like, I mean, because I was. Don't get
Right.
me wrong. But
Oh,
it was
yeah.
almost more because I was like, oh yeah, it was about the journey. You know what I mean? It was about overcoming adversity and all that.
Yeah.
Stuff, you know what I
Wow.
mean? It was about taking myself to the brink and overcoming it, and about
Yeah.
learning everything there is about my sport and about my craft in order to get the most out of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just. It's a
Yeah.
picture perfect
Well, that-
story,
yeah.
but it's not picture perfect, and that's what makes it so
Yeah.
great. Is
Right.
that it's
And-
such a
Yeah.
relatable, teachable moment
Yeah,
for
and
so
that's why
many
people
athletes.
are like, man, how did that feel? And I'm just like, we talked for about an hour so far, and I'm just like, I can't even tell you.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
I was like,
right.
it's kind of trippy because you're like, I never thought it would feel the way it felt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and through all that experience from high school to college, after
Everything
college,
built on
all of that built up, and having that experience at the Olympics, and now you're getting into the coaching side of things,
Right.
and now that's the role that you have.
Mm-hmm.
What from your experience do you feel like is the biggest thing that you try to like teach your athletes and try to like get?
Well, I think first it's just trying to and we're in this position right now because we just started school
Yeah.
with some new athletes and everything, and right now I'm just like teaching them very basic things, and then like we'll watch video and I show them like a plan of a year, because it's like I need to get them to I'm not trying to get them to buy into anything
Right.
like crazy, but they need
Right.
to sort of buy in. Like when I bought into Joe
Right.
and what he was telling me, it's like I sort of need them to buy into the process. And in order for them to buy in, I had to show them what the process looks
Yeah.
like.
Yep.
So I have meetings with them, and I'm like, this is what a year looks like. This is where this is where we really want you to do your best, and there's going to be times where you might not. So they know already. So I try to prep them for
Yeah.
that.
Right. Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing too is just like the importance of the repetitions that are involved, which is I mean that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
I mean,
Showing up on time.
it's
and having
showing
your
up on
cues.
time. It's having cues. It's like having a notebook. It's
Yep.
writing some of these things down. Not that you have to do it 24/7, but it's the goal setting. It's getting the goal setting. It's to start start with everything where it should be right now,
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
going to get crazy at some
Right.
point. But you start with a solid foundation,
Yeah.
and it's right now the biggest thing is just getting the repetitions and learning that the repetitions are super important, not just
that's
from
the piece.
I
Yeah.
go into showing them videos about like why repetitions and the science behind it of why the repetitions are so important.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't really need to get into it now, but I mean the myelin layers that have to build over nerve endings
Yeah.
in order for
Right.
you to successfully do something without even
Exactly.
thinking about it. It's
Yeah.
like, and then it's a little bit easier for me when I want them to do drills to be like, oh, okay, no big
Right,
deal.
when they
You know what I
understand
mean?
the why behind
But then,
it.
I also have to sort of like, I realize too, like, look at these, I don't know how far they're going to take this. They're obviously at Spire, so they probably want to take it relatively far.
Yep.
But I know they're just kids too, so then I have
Yeah.
to figure out different fun ways to do it.
Right. You have
Right.
to,
Which for me, it's kind of like,
yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to be like, just do it. But,
Just do it. Yeah,
but
yeah.
No, but so that's the big thing is just trying to start on the same page, get
Yeah.
everybody on the same page,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and let them know that tell them a little bit about where I
Mm-hmm.
came from, so they know I'm just not somebody just trying to get them to do something just because I feel like I want to for
Right.
myself. It's part of my job to try to get them to get the most out of themselves. So,
Exactly.
Yeah.
and just building a sort of a relationship of like coach-athlete relationship, what's expected,
Yeah.
and why.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
sounds like, you're trying to teach them skills for their sport, but
Yeah.
also just skills that are going to carry
That are
them
gonna
through
carry.
life. And
Right.
No
do
kidding.
they want to go work in accounting? Do they want to be a coach? Do they want to take this and expand upon it and then teach the next generation of athletes? And
Yeah. And
it's,
then it's like, I mean, it's not a lot of people get a chance to like take themselves to the brink of getting the most out of themselves in whatever they're doing. So it's like it's a very interesting opportunity that they have, and
Yeah.
so it's fun for me to try to share that without going, because I have to watch it too, because I can't get too focused on it.
not
Yeah.
yet.
Right.
Not yet,
Yeah.
but I give them a little bit here, and if they're ready for it, then I will,
Right.
take
Yeah.
them to the next
Meet
step.
them where they're at. And
But
kinda,
but we just kind of like work
Yeah.
together.
Right. Or you start saying the words, you start planting those seeds, and then all of a sudden they're like,
And then
oh,
we
you start to see the light bulbs, and then you're like, okay,
Then you
let's
just-
revisit those
Yeah.
conversations.
then I will refer to it later. It might be
Yeah.
another day or two. It might be
Yep.
a week or two, but it'll come back. And
Yeah.
then I'll be like, remember when we were talking about that? Well, this is that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So right now is like kind of like a bit of a crucial time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
awesome. Yeah. I mean, it's great to hear your story and hear like all of your experiences and perspective. And I think anyone who's listening will really take a
Yeah.
lot out of this. And we thank you for
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you
well,
for
thank
being
you
here.
guys.
I feel like
It
I
was
could be
great.
here forever,
It
like
was-
just
well, I
talking
could
and asking
probably talk.
questions.
I cut a lot of stuff out. Too.
I was saying maybe we'll have to do a take two at some point.
Right.
There's
and-
so many
Yeah.
other different things that have even happened that you know
Right.
what I mean. I can't even really get into unless we have like a 3 hour.
Right.
I was saying-
But no, but it's just a little bit of the same. It's just
Right.
challenging yourself. It's getting the most out of yourself, and it's following the process, and it's believing in yourself.
Yeah.
It's like some of those basic things that you always hear
That
about.
you always know.
And then all of a sudden
really
you get
gotta-
it. As soon
And
as
then
once
I
you
think
get
the
it, you
biggest
get
thing
it.
is that you got to endure.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
I feel like if you can endure, I mean, all these things are lessons. Every failure is a lesson.
Yes.
I mean, it's nothing personal.
Yeah.
Every failure is a lesson. Learn from it. Move on. Go to the
Get
next
better
step
from it.
and
Next
endure
step.
and get better from it. Yeah. So
Awesome.
it's fun. I like talking about it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really
I mean,
cool to hear your
I mean,
story.
I did dedicate
and-
my life to it, and it's like it's pretty fun and to talk about. And there's a lot of different ways to do it. A lot of different people will have different ways.
Yeah.
But
Right.
if they take anything out of this, then it's all worth it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Well,
Excellent.
thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks so much
Appreciate
for
it.
being here.
Appreciate it, you guys.
If you like what you're listening to, be sure to follow the Athlete Cafe on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. You can find us wherever you enjoy listening to your podcasts.